Okay, Shalom Akim, Kahalalim Na Yahweh Bashim Yahshua Bashim Rakakdash, and double honors to the great and apostles. Thought Yahshua for the strength and those who made this video, and Yaratazah that I also edified as well, which means to be built up, man. When we say Kahalalim La, that means all praises to. And when we say Yahweh, that's the name of the Most High. The world calls him God in ignorance. But his real name is Yahweh, which means he is, he exists, or he is to be. And Yahushua, when we say Bahasham, we're saying in the name. Ba means in, Ha means the, and Sham means name. So in the name Yahushua is the Son, the begotten Son of the Most High. The world calls him Jesus Christ in ignorance, but his real name is Yahushua, which means he delivers. Yah meaning he, then Yahushua meaning to deliver. So when we say Bahashim Racha Kodash, we're saying in the name Spirit Holy. Racha means Spirit, Kodash means holy. And that means through the Holy Spirit, that's how we get to Yahushua. And through Yahushua, that's how we get to Yahweh. The Holy Spirit connects it all. So that's just a brief Asia Hebrew introduction. But as I named this video, it's Native American History, Part 1. So Yaratazah, I'll probably do like a little series, probably on a weekly basis, Yaratazah, until I get through the book, on some Native American history, man. Maybe, Yaratazah, if I buy some more books as well, we'll do some research. Then, I could add it to the playlist. Yeah, because that's probably what I need to do. I need to eventually, of course, when I do these type of series videos, the longer ones that is, that pertain to history or breakdowns, then might as well be on a playlist, man. But there's this book as well that I've been reading recently. It's called Native American History. I think it's by let me read. It says by Captivating History, man. That's like a group of authors. So Captivating History, Native American History, man. And obviously you will have it says in the middle, in the middle here, it says a captivating guide to the long history of Native Americans, including hit stories of the Wounded Knee Massacre, Native American tribes, and Hiawatha, and more. So of course this is like certain key events, in terms of the origin, and certain key events, the history of key events related to Gad and Reuben, man. Which the Gadites are known as the Native American Indians, and the Reubenites are known as the Seminole Indians. Which really, they're both Native American Indians, because if you do your research on the Seminole Indians are the ones of whom really are rooted in the Florida area of the United States. I think around the southeastern side of basically Florida area and the southeastern side of actual of America, man. Those are where the Seminole Indians, again, which is they were part of the Native American Indians, Delta. So they're both Native American Indians, essentially. So this is the part 1 to the video, and Yaratazah, I'm gonna just bring out some precepts as well, and not just precepts, but things of which are not always mentioned, man, such as the way the history, because when you actually read this book as well, or any other book that talks about Native American history, they may mention the fact that their history was actually wiped out by Esau, Edom, which I'm gonna read some quotes from the book. Don't worry, that's why I got it here. Their history was wiped out, man. But for those who have scriptural knowledge and scriptural understanding, you know that they went through the northern tribe, which consists of Gad and Reuben, of course, and the other Latin tribes. That will be for another video when it comes to the Latin American tribes and their history. They went through the Assyrian captivity, man, where the king of Assyria invaded them, and cleared them off of the land of Samaria. And then the king then brought up people of other nations into that place and basically defiled the land, man. And hence they were punished by the Most High. So it's really, even that Assyrian captivity was a punishment for Jake, anyways. So let's start off with some quotes, Yaris, as in terms of the origin of how, or whatever information that Esau has gathered on the origin of on the origin of the Native American Indians, man. But getting straight to the point, one of the theories that was mentioned within a book was the Bering Strait theory, or the theory of Berengia, which is just the idea of Esau proposing the idea that Gad and Reuben walked from around the Asia area to the American area, which is let's even read that. Might as well read it here. And that's rooted from I think it was from Vitus Bering, and also, but he got the idea from Da Costa, which he says here. Let me do some reading. It says, the long-held belief in the trip across the Bering Strait, which is also a region as well. It says frequently called, and this is in hold on. This is in page 5 of the book. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, page 5 of the book. Now I'm going to read this paragraph here. And it says, frequently called the Bering Strait theory the theory of Berengia, it has its roots in a theory postulated back in the 16th century, beginning with a Spanish missionary named Fray Jose de Costa. The idea was first suggested in 1590. At the time, there were many debates about how the native peoples of the Americas, encountered by the Spanish and Portuguese conquistadors, originally arrived. Rejected the original ideas presented by others, De Costa kept with a familiar idea of walking across land, clearly disbelieving that anyone before Columbus, Christopher Columbus, would have been able to arrive in any other way. It says, of course, the Pacific Ocean and the full extent of all of South and North America were as yet unknown. However, most were aware that Asia was across the Pacific. So it says, to Da Costa, this suggested that a land bridge had been available at some point to him. To him, it seemed obvious that Asian hunters were the most likely to travel across any land bridge, since none of the European philosophers and explorers of the time were aware that the northern regions were covered in ice. They thought it was plausible that land connected Asia to the new continents, man. Which really, if you get down to it, where it says, hold on. Which really, this was a theory, but let me actually get down to the. I'm gonna get a precept on Second Kings chapter 17, man. And there's a few verses on the Assyrian captivity. I just want to search up something there. Asia Minor map. Let's see. It says Galatia, right? We got Europe, Asia Minor, Turkey, Israel, okay. Alright. Well, point being is that is a theory at the end of the day. Which realistically they did, Gad and Reuben did flee from their original land in Samaria. So first, let me get this, and then I'm gonna get to the point, man. Which technically, hold on. Just trying to receive an image here. Let me search up one more thing so that I can get the flow going. Which technically, Samaria was near the Asia Minor area as well. Samaria. I'm gonna break it down though, because I don't want to feel as if I'm jumping from place to place. So let me get 2 Kings chapter 17 as context first. You know, and the Assyrian, basically the Assyrian captivity where, you know, Gad and Reuben and the Latin tribes went through, man. And of course, Gad and Reuben are part of the Northern Kingdom. You know, so let's get to it. Salakia as well, you know, because of my tone. It's like it's past midnight right now. Sometimes you gotta have your own peace to be able to make videos at times. Alright, so and also Salakia means forgive me. Salak means forgive, and then Yah means me. You know, so a little Hebrew there. In case you did hear Akim type it up or say that, that's what it means. Alright, where is it now, man? So 16, 17 and verse 22. This is 2 Kings 17 and verse 22 to 24. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, they departed not from them. And Jeroboam, or Jeroboam, I'm going to just say Jeroboam. Jeroboam was one of the leaders, one of the kings of the northern tribe, man. And it says, and obviously the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam. So they were continuing that idolatry as well. If you click on the name Jeroboam in the blue letter, it will actually say that you know, it will refer to idolatry as one of the sins that Israel followed him to. It says in verse 23, so 2 Kings 7 and 23, until the Lord Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. So of course, you know, the Assyrian king, he cleared off Jake, man, as it says in verse 24, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, from Cutha, and from Ava, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. They possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So in verse 23, it talks about the fact that the Mosai used the king of Assyria to basically clear the northern tribe out of Samaria, man. And then Samaria, he replaced them with Babylon. He replaced them with Babylon, people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharium. So if you then search up where Samaria is on the map, this is what it's going to show, man. Samaria was where originally northern tribes were in. Now I just need to get a good map here. Get a good map. If I can get a bigger one, that'll be good too. Well, we'll do what we can. So yeah, this is Samaria. This is Samaria here. Hold on. This is Samaria. You can see Egypt on the bottom left. You can see Jordan on the right, and Samaria being like north side of Israel, man. Which makes sense considering it's called Northern Kingdom. Anyway, so that's where the Latin tribes were removed from. From that region right there, that's where they were removed from, originally. And in the Bering Strait theory, which we read in the Native American book, let me read it again. Just bear with me. Let me read it again. Because by Fray Jose de Costa, in page 5, the paragraph under the subtitle, The Long-Held Belief in the Trip Across the Bering Strait, Fray de Costa suggested that, where does it say? It says, De Costa kept the familiar, actually page 6, top paragraph, De Costa kept the familiar idea of walking across land, clearly disbelieving that anyone before Columbus would have been able to arrive in any other way. Of course, the Pacific Ocean and the full extent of all South and North America were as yet unknown. However, most were aware that Asia was across the Pacific. So it says, to De Costa, this suggested that a land bridge had been available at some point. To him, it seemed obvious that Asian hunters were most likely to travel across any land bridge. Since none of the European philosophers and explorers of the time were aware that northern regions were covered in ice, they thought it was plausible that land connected Asia to the new continents. So really, that's talking about, it's suggesting that, Jake, Gad, and Reuben actually came from the Asia side, man. Which that Asia side is really referring to, you could refer to it as also Asia Minor as well. Hence why I was going to get this. And obviously keep this in mind, the fact that originally they were here, Samaria, because this also is the region that's close to Asia Minor. Now I'm going to show you what Asia Minor looks like on the map. Right. Because as you can see here, it was close to that Asia Minor area, really. It was close. But yeah, where it says Asia Minor there, and as we know in Asia Minor is in that Turkish area. But as you know, in Samaria was right around here, north of Israel, one can say. Close to Jordan, and of course Egypt on the left. So really the point being is that from that Asia area. That Asia area, they would have, when they fleeted from Samaria, of course, when the Assyrian king, as we just read in the Second Kings 17, verse 22, Gad and Reuben would have had to flee, and of course they would have been able to, through the Most High's will, they would have eventually ended up at the American lands, but that's what Esau isn't willing to admit, man. So let me read 2 Kings and 17 and 22 again. It says, for the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, again the king of one of the kings of the northern tribe, which he did. They departed not from them. So they didn't depart from the sins. They didn't depart from idolatry. Verse 23, 2 Kings 17 and 23. until the Lord Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants, the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land in Assyria, to Assyria, onto this day. So that was the Assyrian captivity, man. Verse 24, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sephraim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. They possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So yeah, that was as key parts, verse 23 and 24, where the Most High used the Assyrian king to just clear off Israel, man. So they had to flip him, depart and walk off. And logically from there, as the ages pass by, as time goes by, they would have ended up in America. That's the point. But we know in this Bering Strait theory, which, is somewhat correct, because they're saying from Asia, they would have walked from around Asia to to the Americas, man, North America and, South America as well. So really, he's onto something. Let's just say that Esau's onto something here. It's really, you can't tell the whole truth because that's within the scriptures. But now, let's see what else was there. Hold on. I'm gonna try and get to the point here. So that was Fray Jose da Costa who initially had that. Then another Russian guy was actually explored that too. His name being Vitus Bering. So it says here in the second paragraph here, in page 6 of this book, once more, Native American history, and by Captivating History. You could order on Amazon if you want to know more. And I'm reading the second paragraph right here, man. That's what I'm reading, by Vitus Bering. That's probably the guy of whom that Bering Strait region was named after now. But let me read to you some more. We're digging deep here. It says the 18th century saw a significant shift in the original theory as Russia pushed further and further east under Peter the Great. The Tsar, which is like the leader of Russia, the Tsar from 1682 to 1725. Explorers traversed the cold tundra to map out the complete Russian Empire. A man named Vitus Bering, a Danish explorer, so I stand corrected, he wasn't Russian, he was a Danish explorer, was tasked with leading the expedition to the area now known as the Bering Strait region. The reason why I said it would have been rooted in the Danish explorer is because his name is literally Vitus Bering. So he's the one who executed this expedition in order to explore the theory of Beringia / the Bering Strait theory, which was originally brought up by the guy called Fray Jose da Costa, which we established before. Now it says here, a man named Vitus Bering, a Danish explorer, was tasked with leading the expedition in the area now known as the Bering Strait region. Until his journey, this part of the map was generally shown to be land that connected with the Americas. So it says this part of the map was generally shown to be land that connected with the Americas. European influence on North and South America was several hundred years old by the reign of Peter the Great, and even his maps showed the thinking of the day, and that was exactly why he wanted to find out how much of the theory was true. And he was increasing his empire there. As he was increasing his empire, there might be a potential way for that empire to continue to expand east into North America. This would have created a Russian presence that was largely absent from the North American continent at the time. Well, really the point is, again, this was a further discovery into how Gad and Reuben would have ended up in the Americas, which we've already read in Second Kings 17 verse 22 to 24. How the Syrian king made through the Mosai's will, of course, made Gad and Reuben and of course the Latin tribes to then flee to the Americas. So of course they had to then trek and make their way to the Americas, man, somehow, some way. But the point is, the Mosai basically cleared them off from Samaria, which is basically the Asia Minor, close to the Asia Minor area. So again, the theory is somewhat correct. You could say that. So because Asia is close to Asia Minor, but Asia Minor specifically is the Turkish region. So again, hence why there's some truth to that theory, Bering Strait theory. Now it says, let's get to another point. Let's see. All right, so okay. Now it says here, in between pages 6 and 7, it says here, what is it? What Bering found, when he went on his expedition, 1724, and I think 1741 as well, as it says here. What Bering found was already well known to the Chukchi, who lived in the eastern part of Russia. There was water between the Asian continent and North America. Not only that, but there had been people living across the water who traded with the Chukchi for thousands of years. This seemed to debunk Da Costa's theory that people had crossed over land, while Bering was able to help provide a more accurate map of the region's land and water. This restarted the debate in more lively terms about how North and South America had come to be populated, man. So really, we don't really have to go too deep into it, but I'm just bringing out certain facts here, of how the scriptures, again, 2 Kings 17 and 22 to 24, and of course this Bering Strait theory, man, or aka the theory of Beringia, where the proposition was the fact that they crossed the land in order to get to North America. But the point is, we know that they fled. They fled Samaria, which is close to the Asia Minor area, or even close to the Asia area, relatively. And then they would have. The point is, we don't have to know how specifically, but the point is, they ended up there because they fled from one place, Samaria, and then they got to the Americas, man. That was the Mosai's will for what would happen to them. But let's read this. It says, by the early 1800s, many people, largely scientists and naturalists, were traveling to the area to try to figure out how the region came to be populated. Their findings indicate that people had arrived in North America much like Da Costa had suggested. These were not archaeologists though, so as that particular discipline did not fully develop until the early 20th century. Still, most people of European descent tried to force their findings to match what they had believed in some form or another since the end of the 16th century. It was eventually postulated that people traveled across sheets of ice between 15,000 and 12,600 years ago. Then people traveled down the coast of Canada and began to spread out the warmer climates of both North and South America, man. So, this is just Esau's proposition. In the kingdom, we're going to know how things really played out. But this is Esau's proposition at the end of the day. There was another part that I need to bring out here, man. Hold on. I'm gonna skip on. So page 8, because the point really isn't to read everything, but to read the key parts here. So it says here, one of the primary problems with the Bering Strait myth is that it completely discounts all of the actual history of the people who lived on the lands long before any Europeans were aware that the continents existed. Native peoples were considered to be savage and uneducated. So that was the perception of Esau, Edom, on the Native American Indians, on Gad and Reuben, man. You thought they were stupid. Which, all in all, can't really blame Esau too much, because Gad and Reuben, as well as most of Israel departed from Yahweh. And we know Yahweh gave us commandments and laws that will be wisdom unto us to be able to really be seen as a wise and understanding people unto these heathens as well. I'm gonna get a quick precept just to prove that as well. Because once Israel departed from the laws, their wisdom was done out, man. Their wisdom was flawed. You depart from the Most High, and that's what happens, man. Alright, where's Deuteronomy? Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 6. It says, keep therefore and do them. I'll start from verse 5. Deuteronomy 4 and verse 5. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord Yahweh my power commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. So we got the laws, to be a wise and understanding people onto these heathens, man. But of course, as we read in Deuteronomy 17, verse 22 to 24, the Latin tribe were following the sins of Jeroboam, of whom part of that sins was idolatry, man. So of course, those same idols, you can see why the Native American Indians had where they got the idea of whatever customs of worship that they had. I think one of them being Shamaism or something. Or Yaratazar in the future, part 2, 3, 4. I'm going to mention it. Again, I'll probably do some research on it as well. But all of those practices of the Native American Indians, of Gad and Reuben, when they were in those lands, before Esau, the Europeans, Spanish, Portuguese conquistadors as well, being one of them, came to conquer, the land, the North American land. Before that, they were practicing, Gad and Reuben were practicing idols, man. And give it a few generations after, they're still flipping practicing idols, even to this very day. Speaking of this very day, I think it even mentions here in verse 25, let's see this, it says in 2 Kings verse 17, 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 25, and so it was at the beginning of their dwelling that they feared not the Lord Yahweh. Therefore the Lord Yahweh sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Which really, again, even though it was a mixture of people there, that fear was not in that land anyways, man, because they would have taken up the idols, the ways of the other heathens that were there. It's like the way Jake is scattered across the world, they would take up the customs of the heathens, So yeah, it says verse 25, so it was at the beginning of their dwelling place, of their dwelling, that they feared not the Lord Yahweh. Therefore the Lord Yahweh sent lions among them, which slew some of them. It says, wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the Most High of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the Most High of the land. And of course, them flipping nations, which are mentioned in verse 24, where it says Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, Sepharvaim, all those nations, or cities that came to Samaria to replace the children of Israel, more specifically the Latin tribes, Gad and Reuben were amongst them as well, to replace those guys. They ain't got no fear of Yahweh. At the end of the day, they ain't got no wisdom of the scriptures, man. But anyways, Gad and Reuben were joined to idols. Alright, hold on. I was reading this. So it says native people. So this is page 8. I think second paragraph. Under the subtitle, "The Call from Native Americans to Rethink Their Origins." It says this is relatively ironic, as the Europeans and the people of the European descent still believed in the creation theory. Actually, no. Let me back up a little bit. Native peoples were considered to be savage and uneducated, and as I said before, considering they departed from the Most High Yahweh, it makes sense for them to be perceived that way from Esau, Edom. But at the end of the day, Gad and Reuben were suffering through the consequences of the action, as was the whole of Israel, man. This is just us focusing on Gad and Reuben, because we hear a lot about the transatlantic slave trade, but sometimes Gad and Reuben, we don't really hear too much about them. It says, so their histories were largely ignored, as well as the Latin tribe. Their histories were largely ignored and their stories discounted. This is relatively ironic, as Europeans and the people of European descent still believed in the creation theory, of which there was even less evidence than the Bering Strait myth. While it is true that many Native Americans had myths regarding the beginning of the world, the myths were no less believable than the Christian myth of creation. Of course, you gotta know that this book is also based upon heathens writing them. That's why they gotta have a certain way with the way they write and what they try and portray. Because remember, they can't reason spiritually, they can't reason scripturally, and they can't reason with faith. That's why their knowledge is flawed. Anyways, let's get on with this. So the point is, they call it the Bering Strait myth, but there's some truth to it, considering what we just read in 2 Kings 17 verse 22 to 24. And the Most High did say he will scatter us amongst the heathens. I'll do that as well. So of course, this is part of it too, man. The only thing that was left for Gad, as he left to the America, was to have some heathens there to be able to actually hold on. Before I even get that, actually I'll get that, then I'm gonna get something like Deuteronomy 28. So this is Deuteronomy 4 and verse 27. And the Lord Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord Yahweh shall lead you. And Yahweh led Gad and Reuben to the Americas. And then after that, after some time, then he brought, Esau, Edom, the Europeans, the Edomites there, to come and conquer Jake over there, man, which is part of the curses too. It says, and there ye shall serve gods, so Deuteronomy 4:28, and there ye shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. And of course, Gad and Reuben are also famous for that, man. Worshipping the creation. That's why I said it in, in fact, there's another one. I'm trying to just see where that was mentioned in this book, man. But the point is they worship the creation, man. But prior to that, I still said I wanted to get one of the curses in Deuteronomy 28. And we just read about them serving gods that are made with the hands of men in Deuteronomy 4 and verse 27. And this links to it. Deuteronomy 28 and verse 36. The Lord Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone. So of course that's part of the punishments, man. It says, which thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, man. So of course these Edomites coming in, they're gonna be like, who are these lot, man? You know, so in other words, the authority of Esau, Edom, onto Israelites. That's what's happening here. That's part of the curses. Hence why they got what they received with those blankets with smallpox, man. Which again, we're going to get into that as well as this series goes on, as I'm reading this book too. Alright, let's see. Alright, this is a good part. This is page 9. I think you can liken it onto the second paragraph. Instead of disregarding the actual histories of the people, Europeans and their descendants could have looked at the timelines presented by many nations to get a much more accurate idea of the history of North and South America. But of course, the idiot that Esau is, he ignores it, and not just the idiot, not just the idiocracy, but the wicked nature within him. That's why he did this. Now let me keep reading. He ignored the facts. By ignoring it, we have literally lost hundreds of years in understanding how the people arrived and thrived. You know, Esau knew what he was doing, man. So as so many native people were slaughtered during the early centuries of European conquest and empire building, it is far less likely that the truth will ever be known. The truth will be known, by the way. And that's going to be in the kingdom. You know, that's when I'm going to really get an understanding of, okay, so when the Mosai made Gad and Reuben, of course, the Latin tribe to scatter from the land of Samaria, you know, this is how he made Gad to go here, Seminole Indians to go there, certain of the other tribes to go into the South America region, and then certain ones to go into the North America region near Canada, which is still the Native American Indians. You know, we're going to get a true, detailed understanding of it. Now, it says here, as so many native people were slaughtered during the early centuries of European conquest and empire building, it is far less likely that the truth will ever be known. Too much of the histories of the natives have been destroyed. Esau, Edom, he's the one destroying them. So it says, and trying to follow the still flawed science, of today is not likely to provide the insight that the histories of the native people would have provided several hundred years ago. So Esau just flipping cleaned them out, man. Cleaned out their history. They'll just be cleaning out Jake's history, man. Now let's get this precept here. Alright, John 10 and 10, something like that. Alright, John 10 and verse 10. It says, "The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and they might have it more abundantly." So that thief, you could also refer to Esau Edom as a representative of that thief, because he did come to the Native American Indians, to Gad and Reuben, and then he basically destroyed them, as it says. The thief cometh not but for to steal, to kill, and to destroy. So of course Esau did all of that, man. Stole certain riches and the profits of the land, the nourishing food of the land and the resources. He killed Gad and Reuben and also destroyed whatever history that they had, man. That would have been evidence of them fleeing from the Assyrian captivity. But let that be revealed in the time to come, man. Anyways, all that history just got cleaned off. Alright, and yeah, another precept pertaining to Gad and Reuben, Gad specifically, Genesis 49 and 19. This is really just getting into the history here with precepts to support that point. Genesis 49 and 19. This is Genesis 49. Hold on. I'm trying to check something here. Was it in... Is it already been mentioned? I'm going to read Gad one. So Gad, it says, Genesis 49 and 19, Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. So that troop overcoming Gad is really talking about when these Edomites, these Europeans, came to their land and conquered them. But Gad will have his revenge at the end. That's what it means where it says, but he shall overcome at the last, man. Okay, so that's pertaining to Gad, man. Native American Indians. With Seminole Indians are also part of that Native American Indians as well. They're just more specific because of the fact that they're rooted in the Florida area or the southeastern side of America. So it says here for Reuben, which I'm gonna get more into Reuben Yaris as well later in terms of the Seminole Indians in another video. It says here for Reuben in Genesis 49 and 3, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, and the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Which really, it makes sense, man, because amongst Gad and Reuben over there, the Native American Indians, amongst them, there were certain tribes that were more, that had a more hierarchical structure in terms of having order and power, a power structure there. And also there was certain tribes that were more nomadic. They went with the flow of the times, man. In terms of if animals migrated in a certain region, then they'll migrate with them. So really, that also reflects the certain nature of each. But trying to think if there's anything else I gotta bring up. Oh yeah, let's see. There's one more thing. Hold on, bear with me. Even though I've already hit the nail on the head on the fact that we're just getting out some history. That from the Syrian captivity they left, and of course they found their way into the American lands, which Esau doesn't want to admit. And when they found their way to the American lands, they were serving idols, and of course the Messiah scattered them. Oh, so that's the word. It says, hold on. Okay. Alright. You know what? Yaratazar, I'm gonna get into that in the next video, which is really just, it's probably gonna be more specialized on Gad serving idols, man. So I'll get precepts related to that, you know, because that's related to chapter 3 of this book, man. But you know what I was bringing out was really from chapter 1 predominantly. Chapter 2, not too much, or really not at all. Yeah, because the key parts was really mentioned in chapter 1. You know, Esau Edom coming to being that troop to overcome Gad. You know, that's Genesis 49 and verse 19. Gad, a troop shall overcome him. Esau will conquer him. You know, that's what was mentioned there, man. So yeah, I'm gonna end off there. Yaratazar, I'm gonna do more videos as I read this book here, Yaratazar. You know, and then get straight to the point, man. You know, brought out some precepts and Yaratazar that you also built up from this knowledge and encouraged to know that, you know, Esau's done a very, very harsh job on us, man. Especially with the fact that he cleared the flipping history, man. You know, with history, you know what? You know, certain people they say you must know thyself. You know, I heard this from an individual in the past. But the point is, you can't know yourself, or you can't know the history of your people. You can't know your people unless you understand the history of your people, man. You know, his story, literally. HIS, his, and then STORY, as separate words, of course. You know, his story. But yeah, I'm gonna end it off there. It's like my battery's about to run down. And Yaratazar, I will do another part. You know, it might be next week. But you know, as I said, as a weekly thing until I get through this book, Yaratazar. But anyways, Shalom and Yabashim Yashai Barakatha. Shalom.